In February 1864, an army of 5,500 Union troops left Jacksonville and marched west toward the Suwannee River with two objectives: to cut off the flow of supplies and provisions northward to Confederate armies in Georgia and South Carolina, and to determine if a military presence could encourage Floridians to return to the Union.
The notion was that if the Union Army could control Florida, then maybe they could reconstruct it, that is, build a new state government, and bring Florida back into the Union before the conflict had actually ended.
Around 2:30 on the afternoon of February 20th, the same number of Confederate troops, having left their encampment near Olustee Station just east of Lake City, met the Federals in the Pine Woods at a place called Ocean Pond. For several hours, the two groups clashed in a bloody conflict. Union leaders, not understanding the strength of the enemy, hesitated to commit their entire force at once. The battle ended when, hampered by mistakes and miscommunication, the Union forces began a long retreat, having suffered nearly 35% casualties to the Confederates' 20%. Two regiments of African-American soldiers also took part in the battle.
The presence of black soldiers here at Olustee is significant. It's significant because after the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 allowed for African-American soldiers to serve in the Union Army, their very presence was a blow against slavery, and their very presence represented the idea that this was, in fact, a more revolutionary struggle.
At Olustee, these black recruits fought a successful rearguard effort to cover the Union retreat, and in doing so paid a heavy price.
Many wounded African-American troops were summarily executed by Confederate soldiers. We know this from Confederate records and the testimony of Confederate officers who were pretty upset by it as well. For many white Confederates, the mere presence of African-American soldiers seemed an affront. And for many African-American soldiers, they were fighting for a cause that was much more than the preservation of the Union. They were fighting for their own freedom. I think that one of the things that Olustee represents is this notion that people were fighting for causes much larger than themselves, or at least causes that they believed very strongly in that were much larger than themselves.
Although it was judged to be one of the 2 or 3 bloodiest battles of the entire Civil War, Olustee was only a skirmish, a minor engagement. Or was it?
We tend to think of the Battle of Olustee as only serving as a very, very brief section in the wider scope of the American Civil War. But there are a couple reasons why Olustee is a very, very significant battle. The fact that it occurred in 1864 at a relatively late time in the war suggests that this was becoming more of a revolutionary struggle, a war between two societies, more than it was a kind of simple political conflict.
In addition, before the defeat of the Union Army that day in February, Florida was seen as an area of opportunity for the North.
Now, the Battle of Olustee changed all that because it was a Confederate victory, and it repelled the Union invasion of Florida's interior. So, for all those reasons, Olustee's actually quite a significant battle, and probably deserves more than the few lines it always seems to get in histories of the Civil War.